So yeah, I have been at the Green McAdoo for about 4 years. Kind of my background. Um, I studied history in my undergrad, and I did a graduate degree in public history. After that, I worked in the National Park Service for a handful of years. When I was in college, I studied a lot of civil rights history. It was kind of the history that I found to be most fascinating. And
Hmm.
so when this position opened up back in November of 2020, I knew that I had to apply, and thankfully they
That's
brought me on.
good. Good. Now you're from Chicago, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Windy City, baby.
Yeah. Now that's a lot different from Clinton, Tennessee.
Just a little bit, just a couple things, yeah.
Yeah. Now you worked at the Lincoln
Yes.
site too.
So I worked at Abraham Lincoln's home in Springfield,
Hmm.
Lincoln Home National Historic Site, and I was there for about 2 years.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And you were a storyteller.
Yeah, so I have an immense amount of stories about Lincoln while he lived in Springfield. Lincoln
Hmm.
with his family. Lincoln is a goofy neighbor. I have plenty of those stories still stuck
Hmm.
in my head
Yeah.
from those times, and it was an interesting history
Yeah.
in and of itself. A very prominent man that we hold up in very high regard today,
Hmm.
and it was an opportunity to kind of look at his humble beginnings.
Yeah. Yeah. And didn't you participate in the storytelling festivals in Jonesboro or
Yeah,
what?
so I did. We actually just had two people who were here for the storytelling festival earlier today. But yeah, so I did. They did a series, like a Zoom series, when we were still in the pandemic,
Hmm.
and so I took part in kind of was involved in a conversation um, about race and how we move forward in
Hmm.
a desegregated country.
In one of your podcasts, I think it was the Civil Rights Trail.
Oh boy, you did your
I listened
you
to it.
did your
Yeah,
research. I tell you what.
actually, the day I came in the summer, talked to you. I was trying to get names of the Clinton 12,
Yeah.
and I listened to your podcast going home, and then I said, I gotta call him, see if he'll be on our,
Yeah.
because it was really good. And then I listened to another one, I think with a local preacher here, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was good. It was June
It was for the
Juneteenth,
Juneteenth.
and and this museum. So
I'm waiting for you to say and I got your high school diploma here and your birth
well,
certificate.
actually, now that you bring that up, um, now da, 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 da. You mentioned in one of those podcasts a quote about the difference in how whites looked on blacks in Chicago or in the
Yeah.
North versus in the South. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So this would have been 1962, 1963. There was an article in the New York Times magazine,
Hmm.
and in it they were discussing kind of race relations
Hmm.
in two places. One of them was Clinton, and the other one was Deerfield, Illinois, which
Hmm.
tickled me because my parents are both originally from
From
Deerfield.
Deerfield, yeah.
Uh, and the article starts with a pretty, um, I think, strong line. And it was in the South, uh, white people don't care where black people live as long as they don't rise above their social station.
Hmm.
And in the North, white people don't mind what social station a black person arrives at as
Hmm.
long as they don't have to live next to them.
Hmm.
And so, oftentimes when we talk about, racism in America, a great deal of that onus is put on the South,
Hmm.
right? And, largely fair. We
Hmm.
talk, we're talking about the Civil War,
Hmm.
right? And how, Confederate states really drove home how much they loved slavery. And,
Hmm.
of course, Union North come in, gallantly to, rescue the slaves or That's
Mm-hmm.
how they kind of teach it. So there is this great deal of Southern bias when it comes to racism
Mm-hmm.
that fails to look at the North's role
Mm-hmm.
and the North's deficiencies. There was a Governor Clement, who's
Mm-hmm.
a prominent person in this story. He was interviewed at a Governors
Mm-hmm.
Association conference about what happened in Clinton
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that he had to send the National Guards and how he couldn't control his own state. And he said something that really kind of struck me a bit, which was he said, "How is desegregation going in Washington, D.C.? How is it going in Boston? How is
Mm-hmm.
it going uh, across the country?" I think before we start pointing fingers at who has dirty laundry,
Mm-hmm.
at other people's dirty laundry, instead of doing that, let's bring our laundry down to the river together and
Mm-hmm.
wash it together.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, people up north have a very snobbish is probably the wrong word, but I'll use it in this case because I can't think of a better one. But uh, snobbish air of superiority when it comes to the idea of race relations.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular case here that you mentioned in the New York Times Magazine, this was, white citizens in a white neighborhood in,
Mm-hmm.
Deerfield, Illinois, having meetings with the local, government about preventing black families from moving into their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And most of the uproar was caused by a northern man coming down here, John Casper, a Columbia graduate. I'm not saying things could have been perfect without him coming, and there would have probably been someone else, but
Yeah,
uh,
so, I think one thing that's very important to note with John Casper is that, you know, John Casper and Asa Carter do come to Clinton and they do rebel rouse.
mm-hmm.
But there is already a small movement here in East Tennessee and to prevent the Clinton 12,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there was a group called the uh, Tennessee Federation for the Constitution, right? And they, prior to Clinton 12's first day, I mean, these folks were you know gathering signatures. They were advocating to the state house,
Mm-hmm.
right? How can we find ways to prevent this from happening? Please, we need to find ways to prevent this from happening. John Casper certainly throws gasoline on the fire, but the fire was already there.
Yeah. And Asa Carter was no saint either. He's from Alabama, and he was pretty.
He sucks. Yeah,
He was.
I'll say it. He
He was
sucks.
probably worse, I think, as far as an individual.
Oh yeah, I think his impact on this entire era was a lot greater than the impact of John Casper.
Mm-hmm.
However, John Casper did create a bigger impact here in Clinton,
Mm-hmm.
and he also was traveling all over, right?
Yeah.
So we have, you know, we know that he was in, Nashville when they were trying to desegregate. We know that he was out in North Carolina as well. Um, However, there were people who were um, a little bit weary of John Casper because he was a Northerner, right? He was
Yeah.
seen as a carpetbagging Yankee.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of coming in and telling Southerners how to
Mm-hmm.
run their towns and stuff. So, and he was also a man who dated a black woman, and
Mm-hmm.
that followed him quite a bit once the news got out about that.
Hmm. Talk about being a hypocrite.
In the highest degree, yeah.
After the courts um, said integration had to be, did the Clinton 12 have a choice? Could they have chose not to come, or could they have decided to keep going to Austin?
So it was a court order, and that court order meant that the students who were within this school district did not have the agency or the choice to choose whether it was Austin or Clinton, right? So Bobby Kane, for instance, was going to be a senior
Mm-hmm.
in high school that year. And, he'd spent 3 years getting to know friends, getting to
Mm-hmm.
know teachers, kind of working his way up through the social class of high school, right?
Yeah.
And you're going into your senior year, you're top dog.
Yeah.
I finally worked my way all the way to the top of the social ladder. And he's told after he buys a ticket to prom
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to have to go to Clinton High
Mm-hmm.
School. And he had a great deal of hesitancy. He wasn't particularly interested in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't have that
He
say.
didn't have the choice. And even if it hadn't been such a toxic environment, it's hard to change schools. At high school, it's tough.
I tell the students who come here all the time that the emotions that they kind of feel
Mm-hmm.
on first day of school, right, and the types of things that you do
Yeah.
for that prepare, like you're going out, you're wearing a new shirt,
Mm-hmm.
typically you've got maybe a new pair of slacks, fresh sneakers,
Mm-hmm.
good pair of underwear,
Yeah.
right? Like you're ready to show people I'm an entirely new person when I come back from
Mm-hmm.
summer. I'm ready to put my best foot forward and meet my teachers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And get this school year started, right? The experience that these students have here in 2025,
Mm-hmm.
right, for first day of school, was those emotions and feelings were no different
And
than the members of the Clinton
mm-hmm.
12, right? Joanne had 7 outfits made by her grandmother
Hmm.
for, the beginning of the school year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at the photos. I mean, they're all dressed very nice, very
Yeah. Yeah.
cool,
They are.
right?
They
They're
are.
trying to put their best foot forward, right? The difference comes, and I, describe this as like instead of having to do this in front of, just your peers at
Mm-hmm.
school, right? The Clinton 12 had to do it with millions of eyes watching
Mm-hmm.
across the country, across the
Yeah.
world, and so it definitely raises the stakes quite a bit.
Yeah. I'm just thinking from the social life too. He, you're not, Bobby Kane's not going to come here and have a girlfriend. That would be looked down upon, and the whole thing is just
It's
it's yeah.
it's very tough,
Yeah.
right? And the idea of like remembering that this is immediately post segregation,
Mhm.
right? So we often refer to this idea that there was a quiet respect
Mhm.
throughout most of the school for the black students,
Mhm.
right? But there's still this kind of keeping a little bit at arm's length,
Yeah.
right? Like this is still entirely unfamiliar territory. And we do see within the, first couple, the first week of school that there are students who are pulled out or don't go to class because of the parents, right?
Yeah.
Parents pull them out of school because they don't want it. And so a lot of the students do return, but, they're causing trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. Of the original 12, 2 left for good. Correct.
No, 2 graduated.
2 graduated, but didn't.
Uh,
Joanne, did
so
she move?
uh, immediately like in the middle of everything that's going on in
Hmm.
Clinton, right? Joanne ends up moving to California.
California.
Robert Thacker ends up going to Detroit.
Hmm.
Regina's parents pull her and end up sending her to an all-girls black school in Florida.
Hmm.
William Latham ends up dropping out, joining the military. Uh, Poochie Hayden unfortunately had some health issues, was unable to finish. Same with Anna Teresa Caswell. Um, and so you do see a lot of these kids. And the McSwain family. They sent their daughter Alva out to North Carolina to
Hmm.
finish her schooling.
If I had been a parent of one of the black parents, I don't know that I could have. I would send them away for their safety. I would be scared to death all day,
It,
that something was going to happen to them. And
And I tell you, one of my favorite things as a educator and director here, I love making people feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Got to sit with some of the uncomfortable truths, and we have chaperones and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes parents who come in, and I love picking on them, and I love picking on them for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them, what do you think is the most important role as a parent?
Mm-hmm.
How do you? And usually you hear like, my job is to protect,
Mm-hmm.
right? My job is to be a protector of my child. I want to make sure that my child is the most success possible, right? And so here we are in 1956, and you're sending your kids down the hill,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not knowing if they're going to come back up.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, there's a number of reasons why it's important that we keep sending these students down to desegregate, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is an important moment for educational history. This is an important moment for Black history, right? And American history. This is about making sure that people have equity within education,
Mm-hmm.
right? Nobody's going to argue that those are bad things.
Correct.
The question becomes, are you comfortable with your kid being the change, right? And we get lots of different answers, but the main thing is I don't let them off.
Yeah.
I make sure, well, I don't know, that just seems really tough. Well, think about it. Put yourself in the shoes of these parents.
Mm-hmm.
And for many of these parents, right, they pulled their kids out of school.
Mm-hmm.
But as we see with here Clinton, as well as desegregation cases throughout the country, right? Being able to send your kid to a school in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's not financially in the cards for everybody, right?
No.
So you look at the Kane family, and they didn't have that sort of agency that they could just kind of up and move,
Mm-hmm.
go somewhere else, and so their decision, right, is we need to send our kid to school, and they tell Bobby, if you don't graduate, where are your brothers and sisters going to go?
Mm-hmm.
So they have to think not only about the student who's their student who's a part of the Clinton 12, but they have to think in some cases about the younger siblings and what the world is going to look like for them. So the amount of pressure that we put on the students, but the difficult, heartbreaking decisions that parents had to make, right? I'm going to send my kid down that hill knowing that it's going to cause them a great deal of stress, going to cause them a great deal of pain, right? And my mom told me after she kind of learned about this, it was within like the first month of me working here, she goes, I want to let you know that if you were in the Clinton 12, it would have been the Clinton 11 within the first day. There would have been protesters, and we would have hightailed it. And that's a very valid response. Having your kids stay, right, is also a valid response. People didn't make good or bad choices. They just made human choices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really, at first I was thinking the kids, they were kind of reluctant heroes.
Yeah.
And then you think about it, the parents are reluctant heroes too. Because,
yeah.
Yeah, it was a tough decision to send them down there.
It's a tough decision, and even you look at the Boyce family, or I'm sorry, the Allen family, Joanne Allen Boyce. But her father really wanted to, Joanne to stay here and see through the end of it, right? Her mom, on the other hand, was like, we need to get her out of here.
Yeah.
It's not, this isn't a good learning environment for her. She's, the amount of stress that we're putting her under, and she's not getting like a good education because of that, right? And on top of that, right, Herbert Allen deals with kind of payback in terms of, he's a guy who kind of does a bunch of different odd jobs around town, and he's known as parent of the Clinton 12. And so there are folks who may have hired him before that no longer are willing to hire him. And
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes, the decisions that they have to make aren't just these, philosophical decisions of, is it important to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, advance our country? Is it important to, protect my child? But right, how can I protect my child if I'm unable to, keep a roof over their head,
Mm-hmm.
keep food on the table, right? So the economic consequences of these decisions was also felt.
I was curious if any of the parents lost their jobs over this.
So the main instances that I've heard of Herbert Allen losing some of his
Yeah.
opportunities. I haven't been able to dig
Mm-hmm.
too far into many of the other
Yeah.
parents.
So that was certainly a risk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tons of risk. But
Yeah.
we saw it throughout the civil rights movement that people who took part in it, right, dealt with
Mm-hmm.
retribution
Mm-hmm.
in some cases, right, in terms of losing your job. I mean, my professor in college asked a very tough question of us, which was, how many of you think you would walk across the Selma Bridge with
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther King Jr.? And I'll tell you, it was a bunch of 21-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
18 to 20-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
And the confidence, you throw your hand up,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been, I probably would have been up front with Martin Luther King Jr. I
Mm-hmm.
would have been right there, me and like John Lewis on
Yeah.
the other arm. And he goes, I'm going to be real with you guys. Maybe two of you
Mm-hmm.
would have been a part of this
Yeah.
had you been around and had you been in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you why so many people didn't
Mm-hmm.
take part in that. And when he brought all of those kind of ideas, he goes, how many of you think you would still? And a lot of us had to sit there and really consider, shoot, well, if it's all of those things, right? If it's the loss of job income, is it
Mm-hmm.
the risk of violence,
Mm-hmm.
right? The risk of retribution not only to you but your family,
Mm-hmm.
right? And putting them in danger too. So all of a sudden, that idea that we talk about, like, yeah, we need to fight for equity on a micro level, on your
Mm-hmm.
own personal level, that becomes a much harder decision to make when you
Mm-hmm.
consider all of those things.
It is. One of the things Jerry touched on um, was in the beginning, we want to follow the law.
Yeah.
And then later, after Reverend Turner got beat up, it became a moral decision. Can you go into that about the background of that
Yeah,
and the
the difference.
tensions and
Yeah,
the
so
thought process of the people?
early on, keep in mind that this is 1956,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the American South,
Mm-hmm.
right, coming out of a post separate but equal, immediate,
Mm-hmm.
separate but equal, right. um, and we see a certain level of violence
Mm-hmm.
being kind of uh, pushed by folks who are in like the KKK,
Mm-hmm.
White Citizens Council, other white supremacist groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is a cloud that hangs over everybody,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is that threat of violence from those sorts that, those white supremacist groups, right? And so the decision becomes, right, if I say, well, these kids have a moral right, you are essentially putting that target right on your back. You're
Mm-hmm.
saying, I believe that this is right. These kids should. And as I said, cloud of violence over,
Mm-hmm.
that's tough. That's a
Mm-hmm.
tough thing to say. And we see what happens when folks you know, don't even go that far, right?
Mm-hmm.
DJ Britton ends up having uh, having to change his phone number, I think 6 or 7 times, has
Mm-hmm.
to move from hotel to hotel
Yes.
because people figuring out where him and his wife are. His wife gets accosted in the middle of school by,
Mm-hmm.
random people off of the street coming into the school. Uh, we see, Reverend Turner get beat up. We see sticks of dynamite getting blown up in Horace Wells's yard, right? So by going out and saying, hey, these kids, it's the law, right? You don't have to necessarily say, like, I agree with this,
Mm-hmm.
but the rallying cry becomes, it's the law of the land, right? This is the law, and we're law abiding citizens. I don't necessarily know if I agree with this.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's the law now,
Mm-hmm.
right? And by saying that, it takes that target off of your back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I agree with, desegregation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that, we're law-abiding citizens,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that is a way in which you're able to show some support
Mm-hmm.
while still protecting yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, we do see that violence get perpetrated, and Reverend Turner is that example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he walks the kids down
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that they get to school safe.
Mm-hmm.
And as he walks to work, he gets jumped by 5 guys,
Mm-hmm.
right? At this point, Reverend Turner hasn't said this is a moral right. This is, um, these kids have a right under God to
Mm-hmm.
be able to get this education. Uh, the discussion is, we're law-abiding citizens, right? We do not believe in anarchy. We, he famously says, we are not a town that is particularly for desegregation. We're not a town that's particularly against desegregation, but we are a town that is against the disintegration of the rules that dictate our society.
Yes.
Right? Uh, and after he gets beat up, that tune changes just a little bit, right? So then he says, these kids have a moral right. There is no color line at the cross. And that pisses off a lot of people. Excuse my use of that word, but, it upsets a lot of people. And, people leave his church after he says that kind of stuff. So, yeah, the idea of, it's a law, we're a law abiding community, right? And even with our home guard, right? They have a very famous saying of, like, we don't really care whether or not these, N words going into our school, we're deciding who runs this town, us or the mob, right? So, very clearly, like, this isn't, people are not willing to kind of stick their neck out there, because then they become that target, right?
There's a lot of dynamics going on, opposing and some are similar. But being from the South, we growing up in the South, and it is you follow the law, and
Yeah.
that was the way I was brought up. I was born in '56, so
Yeah.
so I can understand how that's you're going to follow the law regardless.
Yeah. And, consider the area in and of itself, 2 massive projects that are federal government led, right? The creation of the Norris Dam and the creation of Oak Ridge National Labs, right? To build those, right? Government used eminent domain. So they went to the people of Lewiston. They gave them, they had auditors come there, take note of everything that they had on their house, the size of their property, and they said, here's a check. We're taking this land, and you have to leave, because we're going to build this, incredible power project, right? And so there were people who were okay with this, because hey, we're going to get electricity. This is going to give them an opportunity for my, children to have a better life than I had, right? And going to give them opportunity to a good paying job too. But there were others who said, this is our land. Like, I don't want to give up my land. This is where my family is. And so you have some resentment as well. Some of those people of Lewiston end up moving to a town called Wheat. And, within 10 years, federal government comes right back in and says, the town of Wheat is no more. We're going to buy your land. We're going to send an auditor. This is how many chickens you got. This is how big your house is, how many rooms. And we're taking it so that we can build this project, right? Those projects, immensely important projects that we have in our country and in our history. However, if it's you that's getting kicked off your land,
Mm-hmm.
right, and getting maybe a price that you don't necessarily find fair,
Mm-hmm.
right, you're going to have a great deal of resentment for the federal government. So here in East Tennessee, we do have that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is this, for some people, this resentment for the federal government, and they see Clinton 12, the desegregation of schools, as another federal overreach.
Mm-hmm.
And so that also plays a bit of a factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
My family got kicked out of Loyston, and then they got kicked out of Wheaton, and here we are, and now they're telling us we need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Not on my watch,
Yeah.
right? So it's a lot of things to kind of consider there.
Yeah. There's a quote I found in one of the documentaries. It's a man, a businessman, or
Mm-hmm.
somebody in the Chamber of Commerce during a
Yes.
1956 hearing. I wanted to read it because it was. I think it's applies to today as well.
Yeah, of course.
Most of us are peaceful, law-abiding, home-loving citizens who abhor violence and mob action. We believe in our government and our laws, and the justice is handed down by our courts. Even though our government and our laws and our courts don't always please us as individuals, we as Americans and citizens believe in personal freedom. This personal freedom is not the freedom to form mobs and take the law into our own hands, but the freedom to think for ourselves, and if an issue doesn't please us, use every piece of legal means at our command to change the issue. The Bill of Rights is also a bill of obligation. Today, we are not concerned if you are against segregation. We are just concerned that you are for law and order. And I think that was one of the merchants downtown that
Yes.
said that. It's a very good quote. Let me ask you one other thing here.
Yeah.
How did Green McAdoo get its name?
So Green McAdoo was a man. He lived right here in Clinton, Anderson County. Served in the U.S. military for 20 years
Mm-hmm.
as a Buffalo Soldier, which they helped settle the West.
Mm-hmm.
He comes back. He ends up working as a custodian at the Anderson County Courthouse. While at the Anderson County Courthouse, he also advocates for Black civic engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, he ends up passing away. And when he passes away, we had what is now the Green McAdoo Cultural Center. Back then was the Clinton Colored School.
Okay.
And so after he passed away, the town decided that as a way to honor him as a person who served his country and advocated for Black civics,
Mm-hmm.
that they would rename the Clinton Colored School the Green McAdoo
Mm-hmm.
School.
About what year was this?
This would have been 1937, I
Hmm.
believe, is when they changed the name to the Green McAdoo School.
Okay. Okay. So, okay, one last thing in honor of the Clinton 12.
Yeah.
I've got their names. If you wouldn't mind reading them, just kind of in their honor.
Yeah.
It's kind of small print, but you.
Oh, it's good. I really probably don't even need to
You
look
don't
at
need to
this,
look,
but Joanne Crozier, Ellen Boyce, Gail Ann Epps Upton, Minnie Ann Dickey Jones, Regina Turner Smith, Bobby Kane, Anna Teresa Caswell, William R. Latham, Alva J. McSwain, Lambert later, Alfred Williams, Robert Thacker, Maurice Souls, and Ronald Gordon Poochie Hayden.
Okay, I appreciate it. Adam, thanks for taking time to meet with us today.
Pleasure's all mine.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.